Hi. Sorry, my mic was off. How are you?
No worries. How are you? Welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm well. Thanks for having me. I think Park is also on the line, currently as a listener, but he's here as well.
Yeah, if Park wants to request and come up and participate as a speaker, he's more than welcome to. Otherwise, we
Okay,
can get
great.
started. Yeah.
Let's I'll just remind Park to request, because it would be so great to have him join in. But otherwise, we're good to go.
Okay, fantastic. So now, before we get started talking about LBS Blockchain Society, tell us a bit about yourself. Right? What are you studying? What piqued your interest in blockchain technology? And what do you ultimately wish to do with your studies and bridging that gap with Web3 aspirations?
Yeah, great questions. So I guess hi everyone. I'm Neha. Thanks so much for this platform. I am here on behalf of the London Business School Blockchain Society, along with my friend Park. Um, my journey into blockchain, I think, was maybe not so normal. I think most people probably end up here because, um, they trade crypto or a friend told them about a cool NFT. Um, for me, my journey started close to 2015. Um, at the time, I was doing my undergraduate degree at the University of Toronto, studying chemical engineering, and I had just hit my third year and kind of realized that I didn't actually want to be a chemical engineer. Um, and by a lucky twist of fate, I found a professor who had two distinct research areas. One was complex fluid dynamics, and the other was financial engineering. And because of that, I got to do my undergraduate thesis exploring blockchain for capital markets. And that's kind of how I fell into the space, in love with the tech. And I decided to go work in technology consulting after I graduated from U of T. Um, there, even though I focused more on enterprise technologies, I still got to kind of explore different topics in blockchain, co-authoring a few papers with the Blockchain Research Institute based out of Toronto. First, looking at enterprise use cases for the tech itself, and then later, off of the heels of the ICO boom, taking a look at the way crypto, or I guess now Web3, unlocks different fundraising mechanisms for people who are building. And then when I came to London Business School to start my MBA in 2021, which I am currently doing, I found a group of people who were just as much in love with crypto and Web3 and blockchain as I was. And we really wanted to carve out a space for not only us to come together, but for other people to join in, um, and learn about what was going on. So I can tell you more about LBS blockchain, I guess, throughout this conversation and how it came to be and what we're doing now. I guess in terms of what I've been doing while I'm at LBS, I also did an extended internship at Wintermute, the digital assets market maker, last year, which was really interesting because I saw everything DeFi from sort of the peak of the bull run down into the tail end of 2022. And now I am kind of exploring what comes next for me after my MBA. I'm not sure yet whether I see myself as more of an operator or investor, but definitely Web3 for me.
Fantastic. And chemical engineering is quite the difficult degree to find a kind of realize, hey, I'm 3 years in, I don't want to do this anymore. What was that experience like? Did you kind of feel discouraged a bit? Because I'd imagine I have a couple friends that have done chemical engineering, and I imagine you kind of initially felt like that hard work might have gone down the drain. But tell us more about that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I didn't really feel too much regret because I think the big thing I learned from studying chemical engineering was how to make sense of processes. And they taught us a lot about how to model different scenarios, which I think is actually pretty applicable across some of the other work I've done in my life. And it also taught me how to tackle a problem, which again is super transferable. I also got really lucky because I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people dynamics and financial engineering, because that's ultimately what set me up so that I could get my first taste of blockchain. And then when I sat in those interviews for technology consulting, I had a really kind of compelling story to tell, about how I found my way into the space. So I think, yeah, it's always tricky when you're coming close. And if it doesn't match one to one with what you've been studying or what you've been doing for a few years, um, it can feel like a lot. But I think what's always kind of saved me in those situations is putting myself out there and talking to people who have had experience that I would like to have, and just seeing how they kind of handled themselves.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And yeah, I'd imagine a lot of the even a lot of the mental resilience that you've built in studying chemical engineering translates to other avenues, and even your MBA and crypto aspirations. Uh, you said that you decided to go, well, you did your thesis on blockchain for capital markets. How
Mm-hmm.
long did it take you to complete that? And is it published anywhere? Can people go read it?
So it took me, so I got a bit of a head start on it, which I'm not sure if it was actually allowed or not, or if my prof was just really cool. Um, but I guess all in all, it took me a year and a few months. And that was more, I think, to do with the structure of the course. It was meant to be a year-long course, so I was afforded that time and space to dive into it. Um, and the second half of your question, oh, is it published anywhere? That is a really good question because I know for a fact that there's a copy of it somewhere at U of T. I don't know which library, but I know it exists. And in terms of whether or not it's available online, I would have to double check. But I mean, if anyone's really interested in reading my take on the space back from 2016, 2017, I'm happy to share the PDF.
Yeah, I think it'd be a lot of fun to read. And you know, you're an OG. You've been in the space since 2015. I got into the space in 2017, and I was actually at a crossroads where I was thinking about going and starting an MBA, but I decided to just dive full time into crypto. I still don't know if that was the right
Nice.
decision. But tell us about what made you decide to go pursue an MBA.
Yeah, I think for me, I just that's a really good question. I really enjoyed what I was doing in technology consulting. I love working with people. I love working with tech. That was right at that intersection. Um, I think though I was a little bit cognizant that I wanted to find a role that put me closer to the journey of venture building in some way, shape, or form. Um, and I also wanted a role that maybe gave me a bit more control over my own lifestyle. I didn't feel like I had that all the time in consulting. And I thought that an MBA would be a great way to not only explore different career avenues, but to, as cheesy as it sounds, get to know myself a bit better and do a little bit of introspection to sort out what I want. And to be honest, it's proved completely true in that regard. Again, this sounds super cheesy, but I have learned so much about myself and what I want over the past 2 years. Um, and I think, whatever next step in my career I take, I know I'm going to be all the more confident for it.
Right on. Love that. So while you were over there, and I'm going to go ahead and assume that this was the right decision for you because while you were over there pursuing an MBA, you also found a fellow community of blockchain lovers just like you, and that is LBS Blockchain Society. So tell us about the club or the society. When did it start? How big are you guys? How do you facilitate yourselves and educate the broader campus? I would love to know all the details, and then we can kind of jump into each nut and bolt as we decide, or as we sit, excuse me, as we see fit.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. So I actually see a couple of LBS Blockchain Society OGs in the chat as well. So I'll try to shout out those who I do see. So when I got to London Business School last year. I guess I was a bit surprised to find that there wasn't already a space at LBS to talk about or to learn about blockchain and crypto. Um, and I think there were a couple of us who found ourselves in that position. So my friend Clemens, who's actually on the call right now, he rallied a few of us together to basically build this society. And it really just started out as a couple of us hanging out and talking about what was going on in crypto. But along the way, we found that a lot of the people around us, especially being at London Business School, which is a graduate business institution, um, a lot of people were really just looking for that first opportunity to learn about what crypto Web3 blockchain is. And so those little hangouts we had started to translate into us hosting these blockchain 101 sessions, super chill, super easy forums for people to drop in and ask questions and learn about different topics in the space. And then from there, we started to look at ways we could give students the opportunity to participate on chain. So we became a recognized delegate on MakerDAO via Andreessen Horowitz's university program. Um, and then we started to take a look at, okay, where are the alumni from LBS who are in the blockchain space? And it turns out there are a lot of them. So when we came into this academic year, kind of 2022 to 2023, we started to think about how we could bring our community closer together. So the way we structured our society from kind of 2022 until now, we operate across four key pillars. So we have our governance pillar, which is the team that really oversees our participation on MakerDAO and now also on Aave as a recognized delegate. So Park, who's on the call, and I'm sure we'll say hi in just a second. He's heading up our governance team and has done a fantastic job there. We also have a learning pillar that kind of continues on these 101 sessions that turned out to be really popular and really helpful for people looking to learn in the space. We have a research pillar as well as a partnerships pillar, again, putting out content that people can leverage to learn more about very specific topics in the space, do a bit of deeper dive, and then our partnerships team rallying people together to learn on different topics. We recently hosted London Blockchain Summit as well earlier this year, and we were lucky to have some really awesome speakers out, not only from some really crypto native places and firms, but also from TradFi and from and Web2, and just kind of taking a look at post or into the bear market, how different people are approaching building in Web3. And I guess across this journey, now I think we have about 800 members, which is crazy to think that, in a year and a half, we went from 0 to 800. But we're still growing. And every day, we find someone else who's like ready to learn about this crazy space. So we're glad that there's a platform for them to do that now.
0 to 800 in that amount of time is incredible. And I'm a bit more curious to know what the requirements are to join the club. Is it well? So I'm assuming there's it's pretty easy to get in, but then there are probably requirements to join the governance, learning, research, or partnership pillars. Which ones are more exclusive and are harder to get to, and which ones are kind of easier? I'm going to kind of lean on the learning pillar as the main gateway for students to come in and get started.
Yeah, for sure. And sorry, I should clarify. Like it's there aren't really any requirements per se to join as a member or stay as a member. It's really just, are you subscribed to what we're doing? Are you showing up to events? How are you participating? Super chill. But you're right, there is kind of a delineation between who's kind of a member of our society at large versus who's part of our executive committee and running these events or, participating on the governance forums as part of LBS Blockchain. So we kind of do this in line with the same way other LBS clubs and societies do it. We're part of our overarching student association, so we respect those rules. We do an election. Um, well, I guess last year we did it in May, and this year, and for all years onwards, it'll probably stay in May. Um, for returning students to apply to the roles they're interested in. So, for example, we vote on co-presidents, which is myself plus my friend Max, who I don't think could join today. So we'll be looking for our replacements in May. Same with our treasurers and as many of the pillar heads as we can recruit before the summer. So those kind of core positions are filled via election in May. And then we open up elections for the rest of the executive committee. So those are the people who are part of the different pillars on the different teams um, in roughly September, October, kind of in that back to school period, so that new students can also take part. Different teams do have different requirements. The roles that we fill via application, we they do differ kind of from team to team, like you said. Like some of our roles, as Park can talk to as well, especially on the governance side, do require a little bit more, I would say, knowledge of what's going on in crypto, what's going on in DeFi, and they take a little bit more elbow grease in that sense too. You know, being a delegate on Maker, being a delegate on Aave, it's a lot of work. There are a lot of different proposals that come up, and um, you know, we kind of respect the position of being a delegate, and I think our KPIs, our performance and participation rate, is actually quite high on both those forums, thanks to Park's hard work and the hard work of everyone who's on our governance team. Our learning team, the skill sets we look for there are a little bit more oriented around um, can you help put together a curriculum that's digestible by people who are new to Web3, to crypto, to this space? Again, being a business school, we have a lot of really smart people around us, but we do appreciate that a lot of people might be learning about these topics for the first time. And so we really focus on it being a safe, open environment. Um, so really the requirements there are, can you put together a solid curriculum, and are you interested in the space? You don't really need to be an expert. You just kind of have to be willing and mindful. And I think the rest of our teams are kind of similar. It starts to become, if you're on our partnerships team, it ties back again to effort. Are you willing to go find the people from LBS who are working in Web3 these days? You know, um, are you comfortable kind of creating those environments for people to meet each other and meet people from the broader Web3 community in London and beyond? Those sorts of things. But again, a lot of it comes down to, we just really look for people who are enthusiastic and passionate, um, and want to kind of pay it forward.
The first time I heard about A16 giving, I think, loaning out these governance tokens so that students can participate in protocol decisions, I thought it was amazing. And it was Abdullah from BAM is the one that told me about this. And
Cool.
yeah, I think you guys know each other, if I'm not mistaken.
You know what? I don't think
Or
I've had the chance to talk to Abdullah yet, but we are definitely in like 20 Telegram chats together.
yeah, no, I
So
think I know he's studying abroad, and I think that he's definitely friends with some of the guys or some of the members at LBS. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that students are I think it's not just interesting, but more importantly, it's critical that students are participating in some of these proposals. I would love, excuse me, I would love to know with respect to Aave and Maker, how much time and research are the individuals putting into making sure they're making the right decision or putting in the right vote?
no, that's a really great question. The very, very simple answer is lots. But I think actually now would be a really great time to invite Park to the stage, because he can talk about it, um, with so much more detail, because he has been doing a fantastic job of leading our governance team day in, day out. I don't know if Park is there.
Yeah,
Hi, Park.
awesome.
Yeah, Park's up here.
Can
Welcome,
you
sir.
guys hear me?
Don't be shy.
Yes,
Thanks
we
for
can hear
inviting
you
me on. Yeah,
perfectly.
I had some technical issues earlier. Just like forgetting that you can only access Twitter Spaces on your phone if you want to be a speaker. So I was on the desktop trying to find the request button, but now I'm on. Well, great to be here. Yeah, thanks for inviting us again. Maybe I'll just give like a quick introduction as well. Uh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Okay, okay.
So
Um,
I can't hear
no,
Park,
Noah's saying he
but I also
can't hear me.
I figured he was in the middle of speaking, so I didn't want to interrupt them. Twitter Spaces has just been an awful user experience as of late,
Oh
and
no.
so yeah, no, we had we had a full we had a full panel with Kadena yesterday, and apart from me, none of the none of the guest speakers could hear audience members that we were bringing up. So let me let me see if I can hear him on the AQ. Park, give me 1 minute.
Okay.
I guess I was just lucky because I could hear
Park
everyone just fine.
testing 1 2 3.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Hello,
Yeah,
hello.
I
Yep,
can
I
hear you.
can
I
hear
don't know if
you
Noah can.
You
on the
can.
AQ account. So we'll just go with this one for now. So
Okay.
Park, again, let's start from the top. I think that Neha said you could give.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So maybe I'll start just by giving a bit of intro on myself. So again, yeah, thanks for inviting us onto the spaces. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to come speak here. So personally, I've been in the crypto space since 2017. Mostly investing, actually, personally. Not really involved in a professional capacity, but yeah, really just like diving deeper into it. So I first learned about Bitcoin back in 2017, and I was thinking, maybe this is something I should look deeper into. And on a random trip to Norway, actually in Bergen with a friend, I was staying with this Norwegian guy who told me about Ethereum, and got really interested in that as kind of like a programmable Bitcoin. So back then I wanted to build a mining rig. So I was looking into like how to do that, but in the end, I realized this is like a really difficult thing. So decided to just buy some Ethereum instead, and kind of started going down the rabbit hole that way, just by holding crypto. But yeah, professionally, I started off as a financial analyst. Later, more recently, retrained as a software engineer, and then also briefly worked in crypto VC at Fabric. So this was my kind of first venture into doing crypto professionally. Basically, since last July, I've left that job and started working on kind of building my own thing. So over the past half a year or so, I've been exploring the Starknet ecosystem primarily. So partnering up with my co-founder, and initially working on more open source software and infra tooling type of projects, and then later switching more to kind of DeFi projects. So we're working on native on-chain DEX on Starknet. So yeah, these are some of the things I've been working on outside of LBS. Uh, at LBS, yeah, I'm also enrolled in the MBA program, actually on my last month of classes here, which is pretty exciting. And yeah, so basically, I've been part of the society since it started around 2 years ago now. I lead the on-chain governance team, so this is everything related to delegation. So we actually started in July last year, delegating for Maker, and yeah, as Neha said, this was kicked off by A16Z. I would say without them, the student governance program wouldn't really exist. You wouldn't really have universities participating in on-chain governance. So it's really credit to them to start this whole thing off. And I think the idea was that we should actually move tokens from VCs and other kind of inside holders to more like decentralized community leaders. So people like us, people like other universities, basically kind of smaller leaders that represent pockets of community voices to actually also participate in voting on these on-chain protocols. So it started out with Maker last year. Um, in hindsight, probably not the best one to start with. So uh, anyone who's involved with DeFi governance will know that Maker is probably like the most complicated one, the biggest protocol, the most OG, the one with the most proposals. And then I would say Aave is probably kind of second in line after that. So probably just as complex, especially recently. So yeah, it was kind of hitting the ground running from the start. So we were just trying to catch up on all of the proposals that had come through, trying to get up to speed on all these issues. And then I think as soon as we wrapped our head around it, there was all this stuff about endgame and restructuring coming through. That was like a huge curveball. So it was basically undoing everything we'd learned, and we needed to, first understand the pros and cons of the existing framework, try to wrap our head around the new one, and then also kind of decide which one was better. So that was really hard. And then I think given how active we were on Maker, we were approached by the Aave team around October last year to onboard to Aave. So this would be a delegation from Aave Foundation itself to, again, yeah, participate in governance. So I think Aave initially, the load was smaller, was lighter than Maker, but actually recently it's been ramping up quite a lot. So I guess like this is a really long answer to your question, but yeah, going back to what you said, I think every week we're pretty much doing proposals like daily, I would say. The chat's always active. So I think at this point there's probably at least one proposal a day on average that's coming in from both protocols. So it's 7 a week, 30 a month, sometimes more. So right now I think there's around like 20 proposals queued on Maker, and this is related to the second batch of proposals for Endgame, which is the kind of like restructuring plan that Rune is championing. So yeah, there's a lot of work there just to work through those. In terms of how we operate internally, so we basically have leads for each protocol. So these are kind of like a team lead for each of Maker and Aave, who look through all the proposals and allocate them to a wider pool of team members. Um, so yeah, for each proposal, we'll nominate one person to be in charge of it, to review it, and then we draft up an internal memo that lists out kind of the white hat and black hat issues, the pros and cons, and then also just a recommendation for kind of which way to vote. And yeah, I guess in terms of like our delegate platform, one thing we really prioritize is defensibility for our suggestions. So we kind of have like clear rationale for how we approach each vote. And, the idea is that if something is controversial or something is criticized by, external community, we can always go back to that vote, go back to the memo, and then kind of provide the rationale, like why did we vote this way? And this also helps us, be internally consistent and make sure we're kind of aligning with our own principles. So yeah, that's kind of like a high level summary of how we operate and how much time we spend. But in short, a lot.
Yeah, certainly. I would never thought that Maker is more complicated to govern than Aave, and I guess that comes from you said more proposals on Maker than on Aave, but Aave's ramped up. But I always just figured because Aave is on so many different chains and layer twos that there would be a lot more proposals. And I'm assuming with Aave, you guys have been really busy as of late. I know they locked up on V3, at least on Avalanche. I didn't check other chains, but on Avalanche they locked up stablecoin borrowing because people were just like borrowing Tether like mad and buying USDC, leveraging. So I'm assuming that you guys are quite busy with Aave, but why is Maker so complicated? Apart from just the number of proposals.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think the workload is high on each one for different reasons. So on Aave, yeah, you're exactly right. The strategy right now is to be the leading cross-chain lending protocol. That's really like Aave's direction. So they're trying to push out the V3 implementation on different chains and just trying to get it, yeah, like maximally cross-chain. Um, on Maker side, yeah, the complexity comes from two things. So uh, one is this endgame restructuring plan. So I think Maker has actually built a very good culture of encouraging like different opinions and voices onto the community platform and actually having like rigorous debate on the issues. So generally, from what we've seen, the quality of discussion is very, very high, which is obviously good. That leads to good decision quality. Um, the downside, of course, is there's a lot more work to actually parse through all these opinions and actually vote on stuff. So because it's so decentralized, a lot of kind of smaller decisions, like the exact like mechanics, like these all need to be voted on, and something like a protocol wide restructuring obviously is like then kind of compounded by that because you need to think about how to rework all these decentralized mechanisms which interplay and think about long-term resiliency. So it's almost like reworking like a massive code base. In fact, it is a code base. Like a lot of this logic is written on chain in the form of smart contracts, and of course Maker is along with Aave and maybe like a handful of others are one of the only like actually decentralized or like DAO DeFi protocols where your votes actually triggers some kind of smart contract payload on chain that executes the function. And so setting that whole process up also takes a lot of time. Uh, not just for delegates, of course, but also for the development teams and external parties and kind of risk controllers and so on. So I think, yeah, that's where the complexity comes from, the decentralization aspect, and then also this end game restructuring. I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. So, I think with these types of um, open communities, decisions always feel really hard. Like if you just have one management team that agrees on everything and can act unilaterally, yeah, that's always easier. But I think if you want to make good decisions, they often have to feel tough, and I think that's kind of a good thing. But of course, it's a lot of work for everyone. Yeah.
Right on. And hmm, when I go and I look at these proposals, oftentimes, especially with Aave, because I love Aave and I don't own any tokens, but I I go and look at proposals, and typically seems like votes are in one direction or the other. I've never really seen votes that are super close. I think the closest I've seen is maybe 70-30. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, would love some more insight into that. Have you ever seen proposals that come closer, like maybe 40 to 60, or even like 55 to 45?
Yeah, I think compared to Maker, there's stronger consensus over the proposals. Um, yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm not sure why that is. I have some theories. So, I mean, one could be that, Maker's delegate system is just more mature and you have more diverse opinions, and that leads to I guess like closer splits. There's also kind of coalitions, right? So typically you'll have say a group of people who align on a view off chain. They count the votes and they're like, okay, maybe we can get this to a majority, and then they implement that vote on chain. So a lot of the times it's already decided off chain, like what the actual numbers could be, and then you see the result of that on chain. There's also some interesting behaviors we're looking at around kind of like herding. So basically, yeah, when you open like the snapshot screen and you go to the proposal page, you can kind of see what the majority view already is. So if there's like a minority of delegates that were early in voting on a particular position, and you kind of log on right as they place those initial votes, you might be convinced that that's the majority view and just kind of vote in line with that, even if that's not necessarily the consensus view. So I think there's some interesting technologies we're looking at on preventing that type of behavior. So Sid, who's heading up the Aave team, is co-authoring a proposal with some of the other university societies to introduce more like shielded voting, and hopefully this will prevent herding. on Aave. But yeah, I don't really know. I think these are all just theories, but interesting to kind of think about it anyway.
Well, I'm jealous that you guys get to do that because it's something that I've always been interested in, but I just personally have never wanted to invest that much in a governance token. Would love to know what some other protocols you're interested in and participating in decision making. You know what I mean. Having a hard time talking this
Right.
morning.
Yeah. That I feel like that's me on Fridays. Um, Yeah, so I would say I spend most of my time in the Starknet ecosystem. So we initially got interested last year because Starknet has this tool called storage proofs, where you can prove kind of like a historical state transition on chain without querying it using kind of like a Oracle or some kind of off-chain infrastructure. So there are some use cases around that we thought were interesting. And since then, we've been diving deeper into the ecosystem and just getting closer to the team and other companies building on top. So recently, we were delegated 7 million Starknet tokens by Starkcore Foundation to participate in network governance. I think they delegated this to quite a few different kind of community actors, builders, and so on. So the goal is to create a pretty distributed delegate base. Um, yeah, we're pretty excited about this. I think the first vote is coming up next week. Either next week or the week after. But basically, it's voting on the release of Starknet version 0.11, which will be the first version to support CAR 1.0 code. So it's a pretty exciting milestone, and yeah, we're also excited to vote on it. And yeah, if any listeners, go for it.
No, sorry, Park. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to clarify. I think just to call out, so Park is a really, really awesome entrepreneur as well. Um, and so I think what Park is talking about with the Starknet stuff is more to do with one of the awesome projects he's working on right now, and not delegation to LBS. I just wanted to clarify super quick.
Oh yeah, no, I was
Right.
following. Thank you.
Yes, no, sorry, just calling
No
out
worries.
because Park does so much for the LBS delegation side as well, and
Yes.
then he's also building these really cool projects.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, this is for the really cool projects he's building.
Yeah. And I think for LBS, like putting my LBS hat back on again. I think we're definitely interested in expanding to more protocols. We looked at a couple of DeFi ones. Uniswap seems interesting. A couple of other ones. I know Arbitrum recently launched their token, so they're looking for delegates as well. But I think the constraint there isn't a lack of interest; it's more a lack of resources to I actually like handle this proposal load. So as I mentioned, we spend a lot of time each week just trying to keep up with Maker and Aave. So we kind of decided earlier in the year that we didn't want to tackle a third protocol, at least not with the current size of the team. But yeah, hopefully next year we have more interest in the delegate function at LBS Blockchain. And yeah, we can get more people on board and expand. That's kind of the plan. But yeah, in terms of Starknet, yeah, the first vote is coming up next week. So if there's any listeners that want to delegate to us, yeah, feel free.
Park, you said that let's see. So you said that you were a financial analyst and you retrained as a software engineer. You worked at Fabric, and then last July you left, started building your own thing, working on open source and tooling projects, and then a native on-chain DEX and Starknet. What else are you working on? I mean, Neha says that you're a brilliant entrepreneur. I would love to know what other sectors of the industry excite you, and what other protocols you're interested in building out.
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now we're validating 2 projects. So I'm actually part of this accelerator. I'm not meant to talk too much about like our external work, or sorry, our work externally. But at a high level, yeah, the other one is a sort of MPC based seed phrase manager, the idea is that today, if you want to own a self-custodial wallet like a MetaMask or a Ledger, you have this seed phrase that you kind of get and your asset keep safe, but it's never really clear where you store that. So right now, people just write it on a notebook, maybe put it under their bed or something like that. If you're a bit more paranoid, you might put it in a bank safe, but that's pretty expensive. It's also not really self-custodial. And then if you go the hardware wallet route, like a Ledger, you still end up with a seed phrase anyway. So you're kind of back to square one. So we're basically trying to build a seed phrase manager that solves that whole problem and also adds kind of recovery and other features on top to make it easy to recover those seed phrases if you ever lose them. So I think this one and the on-chain DEX on StarkNet, these are the two main projects we're working on right now. We're kind of working hard to validate. But yeah, I guess we'll have more updates soon. So probably we'll leave it there for now.
You also mentioned that in the beginning, once that Norwegian guy told you about Ethereum, you wanted to build a rig. I also really wanted to build a rig when I first started
right.
investing in crypto, and I got very close to starting a mining operation in 2019. And someone advised me that, hey man, just put that money in Bitcoin instead. You don't need to mine it. You're better off just putting it into Bitcoin and saving yourself a headache. I think that was the right decision. I think, I don't know, but have you ever? I still think about mining, and mining is so much harder now than it was in 2019. Do you ever think about revisiting that venture and trying to start it up again?
Yeah, to be honest, no. So I guess proof of work is slowly disappearing. Back then, mining made sense because it was still much less competitive. You're guaranteed to make some money on it, even if it's not a lot of money. Nowadays, it's really hard. Like you kind of need a professional operation, and you can't really do it from your bedroom. At least it's not really that feasible. You probably lose money. Um, yeah, the trip to Norway was really random. I need to dig up the guy's name, but I'm sure he's somewhere out there. Maybe even listening on the call. I don't think I would go back to anything like mining, but I think the the validator and kind of staking business is still pretty interesting. So I think something like Lido's model, like liquid staking, is something we look at a lot. It's pretty interesting. Also, things around kind of figuring out the validator set, like the making sure that the amount of resources secured in the network in terms of like the cost of launching an attack is high enough, and kind of sharing resources. There's some interesting companies doing that. That's quite interesting to us. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of unexplored space there, especially with staking for enterprise use cases, maybe liquid staking on different chains. So yeah, we're keeping an eye on the space. We're not building there per se, but yeah, definitely a space that excites me.
Mm-hmm. Neha, I wanted to go back to you really quick. You said you did a fellowship at Wintermute. Am I correct in remembering that?
I did an internship, yes.
An internship, excuse me. Can you tell us about that experience a bit?
Yeah, I mean, that was really exciting for me. I mean, first of all, the Wintermute team, they're all incredible people, and um, it was really great to be part of the team. I joined March last year, so it was still kind of in the peak of the bull run, and I stayed until October. Um, and so I think I got to see a lot of the market in between. I think because I came from a place where my intro to blockchain Web3 crypto was like very much started from the lens of like TradFi Web2, and then looking at the core technology, and then slowly kind of moving more towards the side of actual crypto. It was really, really cool to be in a space where the focus was on DeFi primarily. I guess for context, for people who don't know, Wintermute, they're a digital asset market maker and a proprietary algorithmic trader. So they have some really, really brilliant people working on their CFI and DeFi trading teams. I work more on like the strategy and operations side, and on the marketing side, but yeah, really, really cool environment. And definitely I think help me hone in on the fact that I want to stay in Web3 um, once I finish up my MBA, both like personally and professionally.
Yes, that leads me to my next question. You said you're currently
Sure.
exploring. Yeah, you said you're currently exploring what comes after. You're not sure. Do you think you wanna join a Web3 company and get involved in the marketing and operations side, or do you think that you want to start your own project, or maybe jump in with Park on one of his ventures? I don't know. I would love to hear more about your future aspirations before we head into the final part of the space.
No, for sure. That's a good question. And you know what? I would be lying if I said I knew 100% what I want to do next. I still think I'm working through it, but I think what I've learned is really appealing to me is to work with projects as they're growing. I'm still determining, you know, I think if it was on the early stage side, and I think that's the way I leaning, it would be either as an investor or an operator. I think both lenses are really cool. Obviously, on the operator side, you're more in the weeds of things, making something happen from ground up. But I think as an investor, you get a really cool kind of bird's eye view on what's going on in Web3. And I think that's really exciting too. And then, you know, at first I thought I was really just kind of considering between those two realms, like joining a super early team, either as an operator or, you know, joining kind of like a VC that focuses on like, um, at most kind of like seed stage investing. But then I had a bit of a wild card entry because I was talking to my friend that works at the foundation for a protocol, and they work on the BD team and the partnerships team. And I started to think about it, and I was like, man, that sounds really cool too. So um, I am kind of curious to see what job opportunities look like, kind of an ecosystem building, perhaps at like one of the faster growing layer ones. Um, so yeah, I'm still figuring it out. I think there's some really awesome stuff happening in the space, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it. And yeah, it's kind of fun being in that position where you're getting close to graduating because it kind of feels like the world's my oyster. Um, but yeah, we'll see.
I certainly know that feeling, and no, you don't have to have it all figured out. I think you take it one step at a time, and it sounds like you both
Hmm.
know. It sounds like you both have an idea of where you want to go, which is really important. This next part of the space is a segment I like doing because it's fun and it's meant to be speculative, and nothing is taken as financial advice. This is really
Great.
getting to know, yeah, getting to know your opinions on some of the questions that I ask myself every day. So let's start with Bitcoin, and I want to go to Neha and then Park. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin after all this time of being in the industry? Do you think that Bitcoin will remain the OG number one asset class by market cap, or do you think that it's eventually going to be flipped by the likes of Ether or maybe some dark horse that comes out of nowhere?
Oh, okay. This is a good question. I don't know that I've all ever been super, super keen on Bitcoin. Like, I wouldn't say I'm an ETH maxi, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I've just never had the same conviction as other people in Bitcoin. So I think Park might be a more interesting person to ask, since I know back in the day he was contemplating mining as well.
Yeah, I was also mining Ethereum, not Bitcoin. So Ethereum was my
Oh,
entry
sorry, my
point.
bad.
Bitcoin is an interesting one. I think it will always remain the largest market cap asset, even if Ethereum has more use cases or some other L1. Um, Actually, so yeah, someone told me an interesting way to frame it recently, and like I'm far less eloquent to put it in the words he did. But I think the crux of it is that Bitcoin is the Schelling point, of asset classes. And what is a Schelling point? Basically, the idea is this is like the idea of like a focal point in game theory. So the prisoner's dilemma, where you have two options. You can either collaborate, and then you don't get caught by the cops, or you can rat out on the other person. And the game theory optimal outcome is always that you'll rat on the other person, just because you don't know what they'll do. So in the absence of communication between all parties, this is kind of like the game theory outcome. So I think if you look at the asset classes globally, uh, let's say there's no reserve currency like the US dollar, right? Like, so what is the asset that people will park their money in like a doomsday scenario where, everything is crashing? So historically, that's always been gold, because gold is scarce, it has some kind of value that you can, you can create jewelry with it. There's like kind of use cases, and it's also, pretty expensive. So that was historically the kind of Schelling point of asset classes. Bitcoin is kind of like a digital gold where it has the same properties, except it can be instantly transacted anywhere in the world. It's kind of self-custodial, it's permissionless, and it's like a digital gold, right? So I think the idea is that people who understand this concept will always understand that, like, if there was one asset people had to park their money in, it would probably be something like a Bitcoin. I mean, setting aside sort of like the US dollar currently as the reserve currency of the world. So this is like an interesting framework to think about. I don't know if I'm 100% convinced, but what I notice is like a lot of the whales, even like the big funds, the traders, they all hold a ton of Bitcoin. So yeah, that's kind of interesting to observe.
I love that breakdown. So next question, Ethereum. Neha, we'll start with you again. What are your thoughts on Ethereum? And I want to kind of speculate a bit on, in Ethereum, where we've gone through some major upgrades, and really the main layer is a chain of proofs, and all the transactions we know and love today are happening on these layer twos and highly scalable rollups. What do you think about that versus some of these L1s that are popping up, that Algo, AVAX, Cadena, just to name a few, or any others that you might enjoy or trade and participate in? Would love to know what your thoughts are on the future of Ethereum and whether you think it'll remain a dominant force in the industry.
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, I guess I should preface by saying I don't really believe that there'll be like one chain to rule them all kind of thing. Like, I definitely believe in the multi-chain future. I think Ethereum is here to stay, to be honest. I mean, I think because, looking at I've been I've been around blockchain for I guess like 7 years now, 8. Um, and Ethereum's been there the entire time, and the fact that they were able to even shift from proof of work to proof of stake, which, you know, I think had been an ongoing discussion since 2015, but then to watch it actually happen kind of reinforced my conviction that it is staying, it is sticking around. Transactions are becoming more efficient, more scalable. And then you take a look at the ecosystem that's built around it with the scale ups. Yeah, I think Ethereum is going to continue to be a chain that people build on top of and build some really cool apps on. Um, I think when it comes to who else is going to be relevant and who else is going to stick around in terms of layer ones, I think the reality is, I think so much of that is going to be driven by who's building the different apps, what those apps are, and then how many how many or what sort of users those dApps can get. Because I think, at the end of the day, like blockchain, it's like any other tech, right? It's all driven by how users adopt it and how users use it. And yes, we can talk about the secondary markets of how those coins are traded, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to usership. So I think there are a couple that have been doing like a really good job of establishing themselves in terms of like sourcing those really interesting projects, encouraging them to build on those chains, and then also bringing the users along with them. But in terms of who's staying for sure, I totally believe Ethereum will be there. I don't know if Polygon counts as a layer one or layer two. I always kind of go back and forth on that, but I think, you know, Polygon's kind of proven that they're building some really solid partnerships in the space and really interesting apps. So I think they're going to be here for the long run. Yeah, I think I mean, I know there are a lot of different chains and altcoins out there. I am hesitant to say which ones I'm most excited about because it kind of flips back and forth, if I'm being totally honest. But those two for sure.
Park, let's hear it.
Yeah, I think I agree in general. I think ETH is here to stay. It's kind of reached that critical mass where if you want to capture users and you want the most TVL, like at least within DeFi, which is the area I look at the most, like building on Ethereum is probably your default choice. You're not really going to start somewhere else if you're trying to capture, you know, the largest user base. I think the use case for some of these other chains might be areas where like scalability or like really high TPS is needed, which is why we're looking at L2s ourselves for our order book. So, you know, if you're building like a club style order book, you need super high TPS for market makers to actually market make for you. You need, you know, really low cost as well, especially on like placing and canceling orders. That's the bread and butter of market makers. So I think for those, yeah, like maybe something like a Solana or actually the optimistic rollups have been doing really well on this. It's just kind of like scaling Ethereum, and also something like StarkX. So like app chains on top of Ethereum, you know, secured trustlessly. I think there's a use case for those there, but for probably most of the use cases, actually, Ethereum will at least for now will dominate. Going forward, who knows?
I'm also a big fan of app chains. Guys, a couple more questions or a few more questions. Apart from Bitcoin and Ethereum, what ecosystems, what projects, what sectors of the industry excite you the most? Let's start with Neha again.
This is such a good question because there's so much going on in Web3. I think a lot lately I've been focusing more and more on digital infrastructure. I don't know if that's because it genuinely excites me the most or if it's because it's the most interesting question people keep asking about. I feel like every time I talk to an investor these days and you ask them what they're investing in Web3, it always starts with, you know, we're investing in like infrastructure or we're looking at projects that are going to, you know, drive towards mass adoption or, you know, projects with really cool UX that will convince people who aren't crypto native to participate a little bit more actively in the space. So I think I've been focusing on those realms in particular, just because they're top of mind for everyone right now. That's not to say that they're not interesting. I just that's where I lean into. I feel like in particular I've been reading a lot about um, sort of teams that have been focusing on um, how to create like wallets for like crypto wallets, so that Web2 and TradFi companies can kind of offer them to their user bases. So kind of like wallet APIs or like white label wallets. I think that's really interesting because it's kind of straddling that both spaces, kind of looking at infrastructure, but at the same time um, talking about the mass adoption area. So that's kind of where I'm diving in deeper these days. And I am excited to see what comes out of it, to be honest, because I feel like so often you get the question, like, what is Web3? Or, you know, what is it going to be? And the truth is, it's hard to answer because until you reach that true critical mass, the same way it worked through the internet, you don't really know what it's going to turn out to be. You might have an inkling, you might have a rough idea, but that's something you kind of determine in hindsight.
Yeah, I definitely second the yeah, kind of like white label OAuth wallets. I think that's definitely the an important direction to get more adoption. For myself, I've been looking a lot more at more like zero knowledge proof area of crypto. So clearly this is related to Starknet. But I think, yeah, with ZK proofs generally you have two use cases. So one is succinctness, where you're, rolling up, say, like thousands of transactions into a succinct proof and then proofing that on Ethereum. There's a scalability use case there. And the other one is privacy. So basically hiding information but securing that on chain. So basically, yeah, committing to information and then kind of revealing it later. I think both of these are really interesting, and there's some very cool teams building core infrastructure based on these. So, for example, you have like ZK bridging, which is more like trustless bridging between blockchains. So right now, I think if you look at the bridging solutions, most of them are either centralized, so sort of like through a multi-sig at best, or they use some kind of validator network. So basically, like optimistic messaging. With trustless bridging using zero knowledge proofs, you're basically allowing bridging without compromising any of the security principles of blockchains. You're kind of using the consensus layer to do that bridging, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, more like deep tech optimizations like that are things we're looking a lot more at.
Right on. Guys, two more questions. What sectors, or excuse me, what industries do you see NFTs disrupting the most, apart from gaming, music, and art? Neha, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I think NFTs are really interesting, and in a way, I think the idea behind what NFTs do, that's kind of been around for a while with blockchain, right? It's going back to what people were looking at like in 2015 to 2017 with provenance and I think in a lot of ways even supply chain verification. Those were all early examples of ways you can use NFTs. I think one thing that's interesting to me, there's actually with their customers using NFTs as the basis for their loyalty system, but not necessarily requiring their customers to necessarily be crypto native in order to engage. And I think that's really clever. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Um, what were the areas you said to exclude? Not art, not music, and not. I missed one. Um, also curious to see how people use NFTs and kind of like IRL ticketing situations. I think that could be cool. I think we kind of saw a bit of the rise and the fall of POOPs during the bull run, but I think there are some cool projects that are looking at how NFTs can be used kind of in conjunction with real life events. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now when it comes to NFTs.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. I honestly have no idea. But I, yeah, I feel like outside of like the usual like PFPs, I think that the space where I see it used most is gaming. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of like tokenizing gaming assets. I think So Rare has a really good implementation. So if you're a football fan, you can trade cards on the platform where you don't even know it's an NFT, and then you can kind of cash it out as an NFT to move it off platform and own it in your own wallets. That's probably a smart model for capturing users. Um, but yeah, to some extent, like NFTs haven't like they don't have super widespread product market fit, right? Like these are not treated as real
Mm-hmm.
assets in a lot of cases. They're more just like experiments at this point. But yeah, if I wanted to build something with NFTs, I would definitely go the gaming route right now, and then maybe moving to the real world stuff a bit later on.
Yeah, it's interesting that you call out that they're not um, treated as assets quite yet too, Park, because I think I was like, I don't know if anyone's been keeping up with what's going on with Dapper Labs as well, but they did, for example, like and the NBA Top Shot NFTs, which have been, I think they're one of the earlier collectibles that were out there. I think, funnily enough, Dapper Labs did Crypto Kitties as well, although that's not, I guess, super relevant to what I'm talking about. But I think there's like a class action against Dapper Labs right now around and it might be NBA Top Shot actually, because I think regulators are trying to look at them as securities. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting question
Right.
of
That's interesting.
when they'll be treated as assets versus not.
Yeah, and I think the latest news is like a quick Google search is judge dismissing Dapper Labs' motion, allowing the class action to proceed.
Yeah.
Yeah, another chapter in the SEC's regulation by enforcement, huh? Let's. I can go down this tangent for a while, and it's gonna just annoy me. So I want to go to the last question, guys. If I,
Yeah.
if I was to, yeah, if I was to give you each $100,000 and you had to DCA into the market over the next year, what would that portfolio look like?
Oh, that's a good question. Again, not financial advice for anyone listening by any means. Um, that's a good question. I feel like I am kind of boring when it comes to my portfolio because it would probably be some amount of Bitcoin, some amount of ETH, probably some Matic in there because I'm kind of excited about what Polygon's doing. Just trying to think of what happened this week. I think Filecoin, they did some interesting mainnet upgrades this week with their EVM. So I'd be interested to see how that keeps going. Maybe a little bit of Filecoin in there for fun. Probably some optimism. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that wasn't a very clear answer, but that's kind of what I'm watching right now, to be honest.
Yeah, this is a dangerous question, because what I say will probably not be what I actually end up doing.
Yeah, not financial
But
advice.
like I guess like thinking back to my like CFA days of like asset allocation, like you always want to go down the risk ladder, so probably like quite a bit in Bitcoin, and then like the rest of it mostly in ETH, and then you have like 10-20% in everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that can just be things like other L1s like Solana, or like maybe Arbitrum, Starknet when they released the token, things like that. I'm not too sure about anything else at this point, just because it's more of like bear market, and you probably want to just like consolidate blue chips, and then during the bull market, then you can invest in like the riskier side. But I think for now, like even just stacking ETH is probably a good strategy.
Well, Neha Park, it's been a pleasure having you both on. We went a bit over, but I really enjoyed speaking to the two of you, and I wish you both all the best in your future aspirations. If at any time you guys want to return and talk about individual projects that you're working on, and you can always come up on our podium and drop some knowledge on the audience and myself. And if you have any closing thoughts for today's audience and myself, go ahead and share them now. Otherwise, again, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, I guess from my side, just a massive thank you for having us today. It's been so awesome to have this conversation. And I guess just kind of an open invite for anyone, whoever finds themselves in London, to come through for events that we host with the LBS Blockchain Society. We're a super fun, friendly group. And again, our mission is just to make Web3 accessible and approachable.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. Again, thanks for having us on. It was really fun to talk, especially that last segment of kind of like a quick fire round. But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, and like hope to be back on soon.
Appreciate you both, and thank you to the LBS Blockchain Society for making this happen, along with the Whalecoin Talk community for being here today. Remember that everything you hear on these broadcasts is meant for educational purposes only. Nothing is financial advice. So be safe out there, and we'll see you all in about 2 hours, 3 hours for Scott Shapiro of Coinbase Advanced Trade.